Thanks so much, Kathy. I really wish I could have been with you all. It's just an honor to be able to share some memories of the man we all love so much. In early 2001, when I began work as Jeff Skoll's partner in building out the strategy for his foundation, neither he nor I had heard the term social entrepreneur. But as I dug into the endeavors that most attracted Jeff, the penny dropped. An entrepreneur himself, he was drawn to what he characterized as a special kind of leader, someone who'd typically founded and was driving an alternative solution to a major social problem. Jeff had already met and was supporting Bill Strickland, for one, impressed by Bill's success at preparing young people for productive careers, in contrast to the dismal performance of Pittsburgh's inner-city schools. Armed with the idea of entrepreneurship for social benefit, with a particular example of Bill Strickland, I hit the jackpot when I came upon Greg Dees and his pioneering work on leaders of a particular bent, individuals every bit as innovative, driven, and focused as any Silicon Valley entrepreneur, individuals known as social entrepreneurs. It's hard to overestimate Greg's influence on the evolution of the Skoll Foundation. From the eureka moment of realizing we were onto something important, affirmed by the body of work Greg had amassed during his years at Yale, Harvard, and Stanford, right through to the present day, we continue to draw upon his research and insights. Aiming to be good partners to the social entrepreneurs who make up our portfolio, we, like so many others, have been blessed by Greg's guidance. As I started on these remarks, I thought I'd simply list what I'd learned from Greg, but I quickly realized his insights were too complex for a laundry account of lessons learned. Instead, let me share some reflections on risk, resolve, and rigor, themes cutting across Greg's work. Like the social entrepreneurs who were to become his passion, Greg was a true risk taker. Those of you scholars in the room know the system is rigged in favor of established disciplines. Indeed, entrepreneurship itself has yet to take its place in the business school canon. And social entrepreneurship, well, how far could you really go? Pretty darn far, Greg proved. Moreover, Greg lit out on his own terms, hewing to an approach that met the Academy's standards for informed inquiry, but strove as well to be useful to practitioners. I draw comfort from knowing that in recent years, Greg, the faculty outlier, rose to such prominence that he was courted by just about every major university in the country. That he chose to stay at Duke and continue building his own venture, the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship, speaks to the second attribute I believe Greg epitomized: resolve. Greg's commitment to social entrepreneurship spans 2 decades. His own body of work, comprising more than 60 publications, dozens of courses, and countless citations, should be evidence enough to refute those wanting to swat social entrepreneurship aside as simply another pesky fad or trend. But when we factor in all those he's influenced, academics, consultants, students, practitioners, philanthropists, policymakers, we take the true measure of his resolve. For Greg understood better than others trying to parse this phenomenon of social entrepreneurship the meaning of impact for himself and for those he studied. By sticking with social entrepreneurship, even as others argued for alternative constructs, social innovation, social enterprise, social purpose, social business, Greg ensured the slow but steady buildup of a base of knowledge that is beginning to establish our field's bona fides. Fueling his resolve were important questions. How is social entrepreneurship related to entrepreneurship? Why should scale matter, and what drives it? Can scaling deep be as significant as scaling broad? Can we correlate impact with an entity's for-profit or not-for-profit corporate status? And more recently, what are the conditions that enable social entrepreneurship? How can we as society strengthen them? And why should we care? To those questions and so many others, he brought the academician's rigor, insisting that evidence be marshaled and analysis applied. It's because of Greg's analyses that we understand the roles of levers like Medicare reimbursement, which was crucial to scaling hospice in the U.S., that earned revenue is no determinant of social entrepreneurship, but in fact, the dominant source of capital for most nonprofits. that conceiving of social entrepreneurship as the antidote to business entrepreneurship is not just woolly-headed, but dangerous, and so much more. In preparing to share these thoughts, I read through much of my correspondence with Greg, emails spanning more than a decade, along with articles, chapters, and the manuscript he'd been working on these past few years. And as I read, I found myself wanting to talk to Greg, to query him, add another example to an argument, talk a problem through. I wanted him to join my team and me around the table as we debated whether this or another social entrepreneur really had a shot at scaling her impact. I wanted to explore what he called his soft spot for mainstream business when it is conducted honorably, and why we should care about high-quality, affordable plastic swimming pools. Those of you who've had the privilege of reading Greg's manuscript for his book on the Innovative Society may remember this section. Greg recalls reading a news story expressing moral outrage over a poor family's purchase of one of those inexpensive blow-up pools for its kids to play in. He also wrote this, and I quote, "Having grown up in a family that experienced its share of financial challenges, and having worked with many people who are even poorer, I think I can safely say that even the poor want products that are not simply designed to uplift them, to educate them, make them more healthy or more employable. I remember the joy when my parents came home with a treat like that. Yes, even the poor want to enjoy life a little and want their children to do so." It's a rare personal reflection, revealing a bit of why Greg was drawn to social entrepreneurs, how he came to discover his life's work, and why it mattered to him. Like all of us, I'm left wanting more, much more from this remarkable man, even as I remain so very grateful for his intellect, his friendship, and his fundamental humanity. To close, I think I can safely say that the products Greg brought to our field were his own hugely uplifting ideas, insights that vaunted the case for social entrepreneurship from the wings to center stage. But Greg was no policy wonk and shunned the bully pulpit. Instead, he chose to believe we're capable of creating more innovative societies, that we're up to the task of shifting a social status quo that leaves too many behind. And just as surely, he knew that this pursuit, serious stuff and not for the faint of heart, would also bring us joy.